President Trump left the G7 meeting early to focus on the conflict between Israel and Iran. The president says he's looking for something, in his words, better than a ceasefire. Join us now, former Biden senior advisor Amos Hochstein. He's a managing partner at TWG Global. And I assume you, Amos, and it's good to see you, I assume you have a pretty good idea of how the world is supplied right now with oil. And you can explain why we did see a move higher, but we certainly didn't see any of the fears from the past of something called a super spike, something to 100 or 150. Or I saw things even higher than that in the past if we thought Israel was going to attack the nuclear facilities. Why?
Good morning. It's good to be with you, Joe. Look, I think you're right. I think that normally, if you think about when the war in Libya started and we spiked to over $120 a barrel, different conflicts in the Middle East, we usually see a huge spike. We saw about 5-6%, or somewhere around there increase on the first day of the attacks, and kind of flat ever since. I think that's for two reasons. One, the world is actually well supplied. OPEC and Saudi Arabia increased supply just over the last few months. The U.S. is flat at the record level that we've been at for the last many months. So I think the world is quite well supplied compared to demand. At the same time, I think what the market is seeing is this confidence that Israel is able to continue this escalation with Iran and the war against Iran without the Iranians being able to do very much in response, and with diminishing response by the Iranians. And the fear of Iran escalating to include the United States in it means that they'll think very long and hard before they do anything that will affect the oil markets, like shutting down Hormuz or restricting some access. I still think there's some risk here that the market is overlooking, which is Iran exports 1.8 million barrels a day, mostly to almost all of it to China, and those are barrels that will come off the market, and so that will have to be addressed. But I think the market believes that it is able to handle it.
I feel bad about reading this to you, Amos, but the first part you're going to like. The lesson for President Trump is that oil prices shouldn't influence strategic decisions. This is from the Journal lead editorial. Shouldn't influence strategic decisions about whether to help Iran win its war or whether to take off sanctions from Russia. The strategic decisions shouldn't be based on the war. And then it kind of says that President Biden or whoever made the decision in the White House, I'm not saying it was you, but resisted tough sanctions on Russia and Iranian oil out of fear that gasoline prices might rise further. And rather than ease regulations on U.S. producers, the Biden team relaxed sanctions on Iranian oil exports, giving Tehran tens of billions of dollars to finance its nuclear program. But it said someone made that decision. Was that decision actually made, Amos, or do you just take issue with what the Journal is positing there?
I think the Journal, I have no idea. It makes no sense to me what they're saying. One, we're dealing with completely different situations. One where oil was at about over $120 a barrel 3 years ago. Gasoline prices in the United States were over $5 a gallon, and recession, we were sliding back into recession. One. Two, Iranian exports of oil today in the Trump administration are higher than they were at any time during the Biden administration. So if that was such an easy fix, I don't know what's happened in the last 5 months. They're exporting 1.8. It is true that it has gotten a lot harder over the years to restrict Iranian exports because that while 10 years ago, 7 years ago, they used to export to a number of countries where we had influence, they now export exclusively, almost exclusively to China, where some of the facilities and entities that acquire it are not as easy to target and sanction. On the Russia side, we did target Russian oil exports, and the price cap that I think worked initially didn't work much later, but Russia was selling at a significant discount to oil markets. But I think all of that is irrelevant today. I don't even understand what the Journal is referring to and why bringing that up today. But Iran was, as of just 4 days ago, was still exporting an enormous amount of oil. I think that is something that now is going to be constrained. And the question is, if it's constrained for a long period of time, you're taking 1.8 million barrels off the market. can the market address that on a long-term basis?
Would you, just not as an oil analyst, but as just a global citizen, do you think that that Israel needs to ask the United States to help with what's left at Fordo, or do you think that if there's a diplomatic solution, you allow some of the remnants of the nuclear program to stay intact in Iran? What would be your preference?
Look, I think that what Israel's been able to do over the last year and a half in the region is extraordinary, with support of, I think, 2 successive administrations. The Iranian unraveling of the regime basically started last April when it lobbed an unprecedented attack from its own soil to Israel, 300 missiles and drones. Did it again in October, a little lower than that. And the United States played a huge role in disrupting it, taking away the deterrence that Iran had from its missile program. Israel then retaliated and essentially took out the air defenses of Iran in 2024, and has been able to carry out this effort now. At the end of the day, Fordo and the nuclear program, at this point of where we are in the conflict right now, as of today, probably needs to go. And the question becomes, do you do it by force or do you do it through negotiations? I think that's the only one question that still remains now. And I think President Trump has to make a decision. Can the threat of use of force force Iran into making that capitulation of saying we will not have this facility, will have to be dismantled, or does it have to be done through force? There's a lot of human lives that are lost here. A lot of civilian lives are lost on both sides, but today primarily in Iran. So if there's a way to do this through negotiation or capitulation by the Iranians, I think that's worth exploring. But I think at this point of this conflict, how do you go through all the last several days and still have a nuclear program intact? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
You see this playing out successfully through one of those 2 avenues, Amos?
I think yes, I think it can. I think the Iranians have no choice, logical choice. The Iranians often make illogical choices, as they have over the last 15, 16 months. They've made it time and again. But there's very little for them to resist now, and it would make a lot of sense for them to agree to a capitulation on the nuclear program. The problem with these conflicts is that Israel has relied on the United States to help it end these conflicts. They entered a conflict with Hezbollah, and at the end of the day, we were able to translate the military gains into a political gain, which was a more stable neighbor in Lebanon, with Hezbollah weakened both militarily and politically. The same thing has to be thought out here. What happens what is the day after here? How does this end? And hopes for regime change is just that. So one has to think about what is the off-ramp, and that's as important right now as anything else.